Welcome to the Detective STARBORN podcast.
Hello, dear listeners. We're thrilled to have you back in the world of mysterious crimes and detective stories.
Before we begin, we have a small request. If you enjoy what we do, please subscribe to our podcast and hit that like button.
Your support really helps us grow and create even more interesting stories for you.
Just a reminder, new episodes come out every single day, so make sure you don't miss out.
We can't wait to share today's incredible case with you.
Now, let's dive into today's story. Mike, I want you to picture a Thursday morning. It's February 2022.
Okay, recent history. Got it.
Corporal Mark Barron of the Pennsylvania State Police is sitting at his desk, and he opens an email, and his hands are literally trembling.
Trembling? That's a strong reaction for a seasoned corporal. What was in the email?
An answer that the entire state of Pennsylvania had been waiting for exactly 57 years, 10 months, and 23 days.
Wow, almost 60 years. That is a lifetime.
It really is. The email contained DNA results, and the match probability they were looking at, it was 1 in 480 septillion.
Wait, septillion. I don't even think I know how many zeros that is. That's a number so big, it doesn't even feel real.
It's astronomical, and I want to contextualize this for you because the report makes a point to really drive this home.
Please do, because my brain is breaking trying to visualize that.
Okay, so scientists estimate that throughout the entire history of humanity, only about 117 billion people have ever lived on Earth.
Okay, so 100 billion-ish versus septillion.
Right. So to find another person with this specific DNA profile, you wouldn't just need another Earth. You would need to search 4 million planet Earths.
4 million Earths. So what you're saying is, this isn't a maybe. This isn't a likelihood. This is a mathematical certainty.
Exactly. It's absolute. But here is the twist, Mike. And this is the part that when I read it, it made my blood run cold.
What?
The killer they identified, he had been dead for 42 years.
No way.
Dead since 1980. And when he committed the crime, the murder of a 9-year-old girl named Marise Chiverella on March 18, 1964, he lived just 6 blocks from her house.
6 blocks? Sarah, that's neighbors. That's walking distance.
It's worse than that. He could see her grave from his bedroom window.
Oh my God, no. That is sickening. He could see her grave?
From his window. And in 58 years of investigation files, we're talking thousands of pages, generations of detectives. His name never appeared, not once, not even as a person of interest.
He was a ghost. He lived right there, watched the funeral, watched the burial, and nobody had a clue. That is terrifying.
It is the definition of a monster hiding in plain sight. Today, we are deep diving into the Marise Chiverella case. It's the 4th oldest cold case in American history to ever be solved.
4th oldest? That's historic.
It changed an entire town forever. It transformed how we catch killers, and it proved something that I think is the theme of our episode today. DNA never forgets. Even when people die, even when files collect dust, DNA remembers.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it. This sounds like a marathon of a case.
It is, and we're going to walk through every step of it. We need to go back to where it all started. We need to go back to Hazleton, Pennsylvania, March 18th, 1964.
64. Okay, paint the picture for me. What kind of town is Hazleton?
Imagine a classic coal mining town. This is a place built by immigrants, Germans, Irish, Italians, Poles, Slovaks, hard-working people. By 1964, the coal industry is dying out a bit, but the community spirit, it's rock solid.
It's one of those everyone knows everyone places, right?
Precisely. Doors are left unlocked. Kids play outside until the streetlights come on.
The classic American childhood safety net.
Exactly. And on this particular Wednesday morning, Marise Chiverella wakes up and she is just buzzing with excitement.
Why? What was special about that Wednesday?
Well, the next day was the feast day of St. Joseph.
Big deal in a Catholic school.
Huge. Marise was 9 years old, Mike, just 55 pounds, bright blue eyes, dark hair. Her family called her sweet and shy.
55 pounds? She was tiny.
A tiny little thing, and she was the kind of kid who cared more about other people than herself. She actually dreamed of becoming a nun.
Really? At 9 years old? That shows a very specific kind of gentle spirit.
It does. She had just gotten an organ from Sears and was teaching herself to play. But on this specific morning, she was excited because she had spent the evening before picking out canned goods from her father's grocery store.
Her dad owned a store?
Yes, Carmen Chiverella. He owned the Little Market, which was right next to their home on Alter Street. Marise had picked out pears and beets.
Pears and beets? That is such a specific, innocent detail. She's bringing food for a charity drive.
She wanted to bring them to her teacher, Sister Josephine. She wanted to get to school early to drop them off and attend morning mass at St. Joseph's Church.
She sounds like a little angel. Just a good kid trying to do a good thing.
She really was. She was the middle of 5 kids. You had Ronald, the oldest at 16, then Carmen Marie, Barry, and David, the baby. Marise was right in the mix.
So, big family, busy house.
Very busy. But that morning, March 18th, something unusual happened. Marise asked her parents if she could walk to school alone.
Alone? You said the town was safe, but was that normal for her?
It wasn't typical. She usually walked with her siblings. The school was only 6 blocks away, less than half a mile. But on this day, because she had the canned goods and wanted to make that early mess, she asked to go ahead.
And her parents said yes?
They did. Why wouldn't they? It's Hazleton. It's 6 blocks. It's 1964.
Right. The concept of stranger danger wasn't the same back then.
No. So between 7:50 and 8 a.m., Marise grabs her school bag, her pocketbook, and those canned goods, the pears and the beets, and she heads out the door.
What was the weather like? I feel like the weather always sets the tone in these stories.
It was brutal, bitterly cold. The wind was fierce that morning. She was wearing a dark jacket, a skirt, black leotards, and suede shoes. And she had this multicolored scarf wrapped around her head, a babusha.
Fighting the wind, clutching her canned goods.
Exactly. There was a witness, actually. Helen Slattery, her mother's cousin. She saw Marise walking east on the north sidewalk near West 4th Street. This was about 8:10 a.m.
Okay, so she's making progress. She's seen.
She's hustling along, head down against the wind. Helen actually thought about calling out to her, telling her to come inside and warm up for a minute.
Oh man, the what ifs.
The what ifs in this case are haunting. Several neighbors actually saw her. Some even offered to let her come in. But Marise declined every time.
She was on a mission.
She was determined. She had to get to church on time. And Mike, that moment, fighting the wind on West 4th Street, that was the last time anyone saw Marise Ann Chiverella alive.
Just vanished in broad daylight?
In a window of minutes. By midday, people started to realize something was wrong. Marise never made it to class. Her teacher marked her absent.
Did the school call the parents immediately?
Not immediately. In those days, truancy wasn't tracked by the minute like it is now. But lunchtime came around. The Chiverella kids usually came home for lunch.
Right. Walk home, eat, walk back.
Barry and Carmen Marie walked through the door. Marise didn't.
That pit in the stomach feeling. I can imagine the father, Carmen, just looking at the door, waiting for it to open.
Carmen, the dad, told the other kids to go back to school and look for her. Maybe she stayed for an activity. Maybe she lost track of time.
Rationalizing. You're trying to find the logical explanation because the alternative is too terrifying to consider.
Exactly. Carmen Marie went to Marise's homeroom teacher, and the teacher said, "I haven't seen Marise either. She's been marked absent all morning."
That's the moment. That's when the panic sets in.
That's when the world stopped. Carmen Chiverella, the father, immediately starts searching. He goes to the church. He walks the route she should have taken. He's knocking on doors, asking neighbors.
Desperate, he's retracing her steps.
And then, a neighborhood woman yells over to him. She asks what he's looking for.
Oh no.
He says, "I'm looking for my daughter." And the woman's face just drops. She says, and her voice is shaking, "If you're looking for the little girl, they found her."
They found her. That phrasing, that never means anything good.
No, they found her about 3 miles away from the Chiverella home.
3 miles? How did she get 3 miles away if she was walking 6 blocks to school?
She was taken, Mike. She was found in Hazleton Township in an abandoned coal stripping pit.
A coal pit? God, that sounds bleak.
It was a scar on the landscape. Pennsylvania is dotted with these, leftovers from the anthracite mining days. This particular pit was used as an illegal dumping ground for garbage. It was tucked away near the municipal airport.
So it's secluded, it's trash, it's forgotten.
Exactly. Around 1 p.m. that afternoon, a man named Arthur F. Robinson was there. He was 38, giving his nephew driving lessons. They were dumping some ashes.
Just a random guy doing chores.
And he looks down into the pit, approximately 25 feet down the slope, and something catches his eye.
What did he think it was?
At first, he thought it was a large doll.
A doll. That is such a common and heartbreaking detail in these cases involving children.
It is. But as he looked closer, he realized it wasn't a doll. It was a little girl.
I can't even imagine that moment for him.
He immediately left, called the state police. Within minutes, the police are there, and so were priests from St. Joseph's Church.
Priests?
Back in 1964, it was common protocol for clergy to rush to death scenes to administer last rites.
Right. The sacrament for the dying.
One of the priests looks at the small body at the bottom of this trash pit, and he goes pale. He knew her. He positively identified her as Marise Chiverella.
She was supposed to see them at Mass that morning, and instead, they're finding her there.
Mike, I need to describe what they found, and I have to warn our listeners, and you, this is difficult. It is brutal.
Go ahead. We need to know the truth of it.
It's important because the brutality speaks to the monster we're dealing with. Marise was found at the bottom of the pit. She was still fully clothed in her dark jacket and skirt, but her suede shoes were missing from her feet.
Missing?
They were found nearby, along with her school bag, her pocketbook, and those canned goods.
The pears and the beets? Just scattered in the trash.
Scattered. Now here is the detail that hurts the most. Her wrists were bound together.
Bound with what? Rope?
With one of her own shoelaces.
Oh, God.
Her ankles were bound with the other shoelace. And that multicolored scarf, the babusha?
Yeah?
It had been stuffed so deep into her mouth and throat that it knocked out one of her teeth. It was used as a gag.
To silence her.
To prevent her from screaming. She had been hit twice on the head, once on the temple, and there were strangulation marks.
So she was strangled.
Cause of death was asphyxiation and strangulation. But that wasn't all. She had been sexually assaulted.
A 9-year-old girl? On her way to school? It's pure evil. There's no other word for it.
It is pure evil. But Mike, in the middle of this horror, the killer left something behind. Something that, in 1964, meant absolutely nothing.
The bodily fluids.
Exactly. Fluids were found on her jacket. Now, we have to remember the context. 1964. Watson and Crick had only discovered the structure of DNA 11 years prior.
Right. DNA as a forensic tool? That's science fiction in 1964.
It didn't exist. Nobody knew that this genetic material could identify a specific human being. But the investigators, to their eternal credit, they documented it, and they preserved it.
They kept the jacket.
They kept the jacket, and then the case went into a filing cabinet.
Waiting for the future.
Waiting for science to catch up. But in the meantime, Hazleton broke.
I can imagine. You said this was a town where doors were unlocked.
Overnight, that ended. Ron Marchetti, who was the same age as Marise, said, "Back then, we didn't even lock our doors. But after March 18th, the innocence was gone."
It's the loss of the idyllic childhood.
Jake Ripa, a local jeweler, said the innocence of youth in the community was gone. That was it. Parents stopped letting kids walk alone. The mayor, Joseph Kanahan, who lived a block from the Chiverellas, said evil constantly is present.
That's a heavy statement for a mayor to make. Evil is present.
It felt that way. The funeral was massive. The church was packed. And when the coffin was closed, Marise's mother, Mary, gave her daughter one final farewell kiss.
No parent should ever have to do that.
No. And for 58 years, Marise Chiverella would pray for one thing. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, she ended grace with the same prayer.
What was it?
Please help the Pennsylvania State Police find the man that hurt my daughter.
Every single day?
For the rest of her life.
Did she live to see it?
Mary died in 2014, 50 years after the murder.
She never knew.
She never knew. Her husband, Carmen, died years earlier. They both went to their graves without answers.
That is a tragedy on top of a tragedy. The waiting, the not knowing.
It is. But the Pennsylvania State Police, they made a promise. They promised they would never stop looking.
So take me into the investigation in '64. I mean, they didn't have DNA. What did they have?
They had manpower, and they had determination. Retired trooper Donald Good was one of the first responders. This team worked 20-hour days, 7 days a week, from March until mid-July.
4 months of 20-hour days? That is intense dedication.
No days off. They compiled over 4,600 pages of documents. They interviewed hundreds of people.
They must have been desperate for a lead.
They chased everything. There was a man who owed money to the grocery store who confessed.
He confessed? Why?
He said he strangled her with his hands.
But she was strangled with the shoelaces.
Exactly. Police knew details the public didn't. The confession was false.
Why do people do that? Why confess to a crime you didn't commit?
Mental illness, a desire for notoriety, it happens more than you'd think. Then there was another guy scheduled for a polygraph. The night before the test, he drives near the pit where the body was found, and he dies of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Suicide?
Or an accident. He let the motor run to stay warm. Nobody knows for sure. But he was never definitively connected.
So, dead ends. Just dead end after dead end.
They even looked at a similar case from 1962, a girl named Carol Ann Doherty. But no connection. The investigators were doing everything right. They were asking the right questions, but they had one massive problem.
The killer wasn't on their radar.
Invisible. His name never came up. Not in a tip, not in a witness statement. Over 230 state troopers worked this case over the decades.
230?
It became part of the department's DNA. Trooper Good's wife said that every year on the anniversary, her husband would just bring up Marise's name, just thinking about her.
It haunts them. You can't let go of a child.
You can't. So we fast forward. The parents pass away. The siblings, Ron, Carmen Marie, Barry, David, they grow up carrying this weight. But they hold on to that promise from the police.
And technology is changing. We're moving into the era of DNA.
Right. So 2007, 43 years after the murder, the Pennsylvania State Police DNA lab finally develops a suspect profile from that fluid on the jacket.
This is it. This is the breakthrough.
You would think so. They ran it against all the original suspects.
And?
0 matches. Every single original suspect was eliminated.
That is crushing. So the guy they were looking for wasn't even on the list.
Not even close. So they enter the profile into CODIS. You know what CODIS is?
The National DNA Database? Convicted offenders, that sort of thing?
Right. Lieutenant Devin Brutowski explained that from 2007 onwards, they checked that profile monthly, every single month for over 12 years.
They're running it against every new arrestee, every new convict in the country?
Every single one. 2008, 2009, 2010, all the way to 2019.
And?
Silence. No matches.
Why? If this guy is a monster, surely he's in the system.
That's the catch. He wasn't in the system because, as we mentioned at the start, he died in 1980.
Right, before DNA databasing was even a thing. So his DNA is just rotting in a grave somewhere, and the computer system has no record of him.
Exactly. So the case goes cold again. It hits a brick wall. But then, 2018 happens.
What happened in 2018?
The Golden State Killer was caught.
Ah, yes, the game changer.
Genetic genealogy. The Pennsylvania State Police realized they needed to try something radical. They partnered with Parabon Nanolabs.
I've heard of them. They do the digital sketches?
Snapshot forensic DNA phenotyping. It's incredible stuff. They used the killer's DNA to predict what he looked like. Ancestry, European. Hair, dark. Eyes, blue or green. Skin, fair with freckles.
So they create a face from the genes.
They released images of what he would look like at 25, 40, and 60. They put it everywhere. Social media, the press, hoping someone would recognize him.
Did it work?
It generated buzz, but it didn't generate a name. But Parabon did something else. In 2019, they uploaded the killer's profile to GED Match.
Now, GED Match is different from CODIS, right? This is the public one?
Correct. CODIS is for criminals. GED Match is where you and I might upload our Ancestry.com results to find long-lost cousins. It's open source.
So they're fishing in a completely different pond.
And they got a bite.
They found him?
No, they found a thread. A very, very thin thread. They found a match that was approximately 53 centimorgans.
53 centimorgans? I'm not a geneticist, Sarah, but that sounds small.
It is tiny. It's roughly a sixth cousin.
A sixth cousin? I don't even know my third cousins. How do you solve a murder with a sixth cousin?
You need a genius. Or in this case, you need a teenager.
A teenager?
Enter Eric Schubert.
Who is Eric Schubert?
In February of 2020, Eric was an 18-year-old college freshman at Elizabethtown College. He was a history major, but he had a hobby.
Let me guess. Genealogy?
Since he was 8 years old, he had 10 years of experience by the time he was 18. He started because his grandmother was adopted, and he got really good at building family trees.
So this kid is sitting in his dorm room.
Reading about cold cases. He sees the article about Marise Chiverella. Hazleton is only 80 miles from his college, and he just can't stop thinking about it.
So what does he do?
He does something that most 18-year-olds wouldn't have the guts to do. He sends an email to the Pennsylvania State Police.
Hey guys, I can help?
Basically, he wrote, "I think I know what I'm doing. If I'm not stepping on any toes, I'd be happy to help."
And the police listened? Usually law enforcement is pretty protective of their cases.
They are, but Lieutenant Brutowski vetted him. He saw that Eric had actually helped solve some other cases near Philadelphia and Chicago. He realized this kid was a prodigy.
So they bring him in.
They accepted his offer. Eric Schubert would work on the case for free.
That is amazing.
They gave him access to the partial case file and the list of potential matches from GEDA-Match. His job? Take that 53 centimorgan match, that distant cousin, and build a tree backwards to find the killer.
That's like finding a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is the size of a state.
It started with about 2,000 people who might be shared ancestors. Eric spent up to 20 hours a week on this, on top of his college classes.
This kid is a hero already.
He is. And throughout 2020 and 2021, he just kept digging, building trees, asking for more DNA samples from the police to test against specific lines, and then a surname emerged.
What was the name?
Palmino.
Palmino? Why did that ring a bell?
The troopers recognized it. There had been a woman named Renata Palmino shot dead in the 70s. The DNA related to that investigation confirmed they were on the right ancestral track.
So the families are connected.
They found a family historian within the Palmino family, a retired New Jersey State Police captain, actually.
Wow, small world.
The family cooperated, they gave voluntary DNA samples, and slowly, painfully slowly, that 53 centimorgan match started to climb.
They're getting warmer.
100 centimorgans, 500, then over 1,000. That's first cousin territory.
They are knocking on the door now.
They also established a Y chromosome profile, which tracks the male line directly.
Okay, so they know it's a male, obviously. And they have the family line.
The research narrowed the suspect pool down to 4 individuals, 4 men.
4 men. One of them is the killer.
And one of them had been arrested in 1974 for a sexual assault.
1974? That's 10 years after Marise.
His name was James Paul Forte.
James Paul Forte.
Born July 21st, 1941 in Hazleton. He graduated high school in 59, served in the Army until 62.
So he was back in town in 64.
He was 22 years old when Marise was murdered. And Mike, when investigators looked at his address history, their jaws hit the floor.
The 6 blocks?
He lived at 18 West 14th Street, directly across the street from St. Joseph Slovak Roman Catholic Cemetery.
Where Marise is buried.
He could see her final resting place from his window. He also lived at addresses on Laurel Street, all within 6 or 7 blocks of the Chiverella home.
He was right there the whole time.
But here is the kicker. Authorities determined he had no connection to the family. He didn't know them.
So it was random?
A crime of opportunity, a random act of absolute evil. Trooper James Quiros emphasized that. Forte acted alone. His family had no idea.
That's important to say. His family are victims of this legacy too.
Absolutely. But investigators needed to be sure. They looked at that 1974 arrest, and when you compare the 1974 assault to the 1964 murder, the similarities are terrifying.
How so?
Both involved violent sexual assault. Both happened in the Hazleton area. Both involved using a vehicle to transport the victim to a secluded location.
It's the same MO.
It is. In 74, he attacked a 23-year-old woman. He picked her up at a lounge, drove her to a mountain road, and assaulted her.
Did she survive?
She did. She escaped. She walked home. Police arrested Forte. They found hair samples in his car.
So they got him. He went to prison, right?
Mike, this is the part that is gonna make you furious.
Oh no.
He was charged with involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, indecent assault, aggravated assault.
Serious charges.
He pleaded guilty to aggravated assault only. The sexual assault charges were withdrawn.
You have got to be kidding me.
Judge Bernard C. Breminski sentenced him to 1 year of special probation.
Probation? For a violent sexual assault?
No prison time, just a slap on the wrist.
That is a failure of justice on every level.
It is. And remember, in 1974, they had no idea he was the man who killed Marise Chiverella 10 years earlier. No DNA connection.
So he walked free.
He walked free. He continued to live in Hazleton. He was arrested again in 78 for running around with a gun.
This guy is a ticking time bomb.
And then, on May 16th, 1980, it ended.
How?
He was working as a bartender. He collapsed at work. Heart attack, dead on arrival.
Just like that? No trial, no confrontation? Just dead.
Dead at 38. Buried in Calvary Cemetery in Drums, Pennsylvania. He died believing he had gotten away with it.
And for 40 years, he did.
But in December 2021, the investigators made a decision. They had the genealogy, they had the address, they had the prior arrest, but they needed 100% certainty.
They needed his DNA.
And there was only one place to get it.
They had to dig him up.
They were going to bring James Paul Forte's secret out of the grave.
This is the moment. This is where science meets justice.
It is. And what they found when they opened that grave, well, that's where we're going to pick up in part 2.
Oh, you cannot leave us hanging there.
I have to. Because the story of the exhumation, the confirmation, and the emotional press conference that followed, it deserves its own episode.
Fair enough. Listeners, you do not want to miss the next part.
Make sure you're subscribed so you get the notification as soon as part 2 drops. We're going to take you inside that press conference room and hear from the family who waited 58 years for the truth.
Until next time, stay safe.
And remember, DNA never forgets. Goodbye, everyone.
They had to dig him up.
It was the only way. The genealogy was a pointer, a compass heading, but in a court of law, or rather in the court of historical record, because you can't try a dead man, you need absolute biological certainty. You need a direct one-to-one comparison.
God, imagine the atmosphere in that room when that decision was made. You have the genealogy, you have the address, you have the proximity. You know it's him, but you still have to go to a judge, get a warrant, go to a cemetery, and disturb a grave that's been sealed for 41 years. That is That is heavy.
It is heavy, and they didn't take it lightly. This was a massive coordination between the Pennsylvania State Police, the Luzerne County District Attorney's Office, and the officials at Calvary Cemetery. They needed to be sure that when they did this, it was going to yield the final answer.
So walk me through it. When did this actually happen?
January 6th, 2022.
Okay, so this is recent. This is dead of winter in Pennsylvania.
Exactly. The ground is frozen, it's gray, it's cold, just like the day Marise disappeared in 1964. They went to Calvary Cemetery in Drums, Pennsylvania. They located the plot of James Paul Forte, and they exhumed his remains.
41 years, 7 months, and 21 days after he was buried.
They weren't looking for a full autopsy, obviously. They just needed tissue, a bone sample, anything that could still hold genetic material after 4 decades of decomposition. Which isn't a guarantee, right? I mean, DNA degrades. Depending on the soil, the casket, the conditions, there was a non-zero chance they open that grave and find nothing usable. That was the fear. But they got what they needed. A tissue sample was secured. And Deputy District Attorney Daniel Zola said something at the time that really stuck with me. He said, "Forte may have thought he took his secret to the grave, but we brought him out of the ground and took his DNA."
That's a powerful line. It's almost biblical. You think you're safe in death? No, not anymore. Not with this science.
So the sample goes to the Pennsylvania State Police DNA lab, and then the wait begins again. They've waited 58 years. Now they have to wait just a few more weeks.
I can't even imagine the anxiety for the Chiverella family during those weeks, knowing the answer is spinning in a centrifuge somewhere.
The results arrived on a Thursday morning, February 3rd, 2022. Corporal Mark Barron, the lead investigator we mentioned in Part 1, opens the email.
This is it, the moment of truth.
The DNA profile from the exhumed remains of James Paul Forte matched the DNA profile from the semen stain found on Marise Ann Chiverella's jacket in 1964.
Got him.
They got him. And Mike, the statistics on this match, we hear DNA match all the time on TV, and we just nod. But I need to read you the actual numbers from the report because they are staggering.
Hit me.
The match probability was 1 in 480 septillion.
Septillion. I don't even know how many zeros that is.
It's 24 zeros, 480 followed by 24 zeros.
That's a number that doesn't even make sense to the human brain.
Let me contextualize it the way the report did because this really drives it home. Scientists estimate that approximately 117 billion people have ever lived on Earth in the entire history of the human species.
Okay.
To find another person with this specific DNA profile, you would need to search 4 million planet Earths.
4 million.
4 million planets, each with the entire population of human history on it. That is the level of certainty we are talking about.
So there is no doubt. There is no margin of error. It's him. It is absolutely, unequivocally James Paul Forte.
It's him. After 57 years, 10 months, and 23 days, the monster had a name.
You know, hearing that, it brings up such a mix of emotions. On one hand, yes, science wins, justice wins. But on the other hand, he's gone. He's been dead since 1980. He never sat in a cell for this. He never stood before a judge for Marise. He lived his life, died of a heart attack, and that was it. Does that feel like justice?
That's the complex part, isn't it? And that was the atmosphere leading into the press conference. They had the answer, but they didn't have the prisoner.
Right. You can't put handcuffs on a headstone.
So let's go to that press conference. February 10, 2022, Hazel Township Commons Building, 10 a.m.
I saw the footage of this. The room was absolutely packed.
Packed. You had the current command staff, you had the retired troopers, guys in their 80s who worked the case back in the 60s. You had the district attorney, and of course, you had the Chiverella family. Ron, Carmen Marie, Barry, David.
The siblings. The ones who carried this weight their whole lives.
Corporal Mark Barron stepped up to the podium first. And Mike, this is a seasoned investigator. He's seen terrible things, he's trained to be stoic. But when he started talking about this case, he broke.
He cried?
He fought back tears the entire time. He had to pause to compose himself multiple times. He said, "We're always told not to get attached to a case, but you can't help it."
You really can't, especially involving a child, and especially one that's haunted the community for that long. It becomes part of your own identity as a cop.
He talked about how the murder ushered in a change in the community, how doors got locked, how childhood ended in Hazleton on March 18th, 1964. You could feel that he wasn't just speaking as police, he was speaking as a member of that community.
And Lieutenant Devin Brutowski made a point that really blew my mind. He talked about the timeline of the state police itself.
Yes, he noted that the Pennsylvania State Police was founded in 1905. So this agency has been investigating the Marise Chiverella murder for more than half of its entire existence.
That is insane. Think about the turnover. Think about how many troopers retired, how many died, how many new cadets came in, all while this one file sat open on the desk.
It really speaks to the institutional memory. They didn't let it become just a box in the basement. They passed the torch, trooper to trooper, generation to generation.
But the most powerful voices in that room weren't the police. It was the family.
Carmen Marie, Marise's sister, took the microphone. And you have to remember, their parents, Carmen and Mary, died without knowing. They went to their graves with this question unanswered.
That's the tragedy within the tragedy.
But Carmen Marie said something that defines grace. She said their parents expressed their sentiments a long time ago. She said they didn't want punishment or revenge. They wanted justice.
Didn't want revenge? After someone strangles your 9-year-old daughter and you don't want revenge? That is a level of spiritual fortitude I don't know if I possess.
She said, "Our family now knows the identity of her murderer. Justice has been served today." It wasn't about hating Forte. It was about restoring Marise's name and dignity.
And Ron, the older brother, he spoke too, right?
He did. He talked about closure, but he was realistic. He said, "I don't have closure that it's all behind me, because how could it be? You still have the memories of that day. You still have the what-ifs." He rattled off a list of troopers by name, calling them the frontline team. He said they provided comfort and hope and never left the family's side.
That relationship between a victim's family and the detectives, it's so unique. It spans decades. They become like extended family.
Absolutely. And then there was Eric Schubert,
The boy wonder.
the 20-year-old college student standing there with all these seasoned law enforcement veterans.
I love this kid. I mean, honestly, he's doing this from his dorm room, basically?
Pretty much. And at the press conference, he was just as emotional as everyone else. He said this was probably the hardest genealogy task I've ever faced. He said it meant the world to him to provide answers.
It's such a cool contrast. You have the 89-year-old retired trooper Don Good sitting in the audience and the 20-year-old kid at the podium. It took the old school police work, preserving that evidence, combined with the new school tech to finally close the loop.
It really was the perfect storm. But, Mike, once the euphoria of the identification settled, the conversation turned to the killer himself, James Paul Forte.
Yeah, who was this guy? I mean, we know he was 22, lived in the neighborhood, but what else?
This is where the story gets incredibly dark and, frankly, infuriating.
Okay, I'm ready.
When investigators started digging into Forte's past, they found something. 10 years after he murdered Marise, 1974.
He did it again.
He didn't kill, but he attacked. April 3rd, 1974, 4 a.m., a 23-year-old woman.
What happened?
She was visiting a friend at a bar called the Capri Lounge. Forte was supposed to give her a ride home. Sound familiar?
Using the car, just like the suspicion with Marise.
Instead of taking her home, he drives her to a secluded spot on Stockton Mountain Road, and he attacks her. Sexual assault, extremely violent.
God.
A truck happened to pull up behind them, and he got spooked. He fled the scene, let her out on a street corner later. She went straight to the police. They arrested him.
Okay, so 1974, he's in custody, they have a violent sexual assault, they have his car, they have evidence. This should be it. This should be where they connect him to Marise, or at least lock him away forever.
You would think, but remember, no DNA in 1974, no way to link him to the 1964 cold case. To the police then, he was just a guy arrested for an assault. But here is the part that will make your blood boil.
Oh no.
He was charged with involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, indecent assault, aggravated assault. Serious charges.
Right. Decades in prison type charges.
September 18th, 1974, he pleads guilty to aggravated assault only. The prosecutors withdrew the sexual assault charges.
Are you kidding me?
October 2nd, 1974, the judge sentences him.
To what? 10 years? 20?
1 year of special probation.
1 year of probation? Not even jail time?
No prison time. He was ordered to pay the victim's hospital bill.
That is absolutely disgusting. I mean, I know the 70s were different regarding how they treated crimes against women, but he's a monster. He violently assaulted a woman, confessed to assault, and walked out the door?
He walked out, and he went right back to living in Hazleton, right back to living 6 blocks from the Chiverella family.
That is nauseating. If they had taken that seriously, if he had been in prison,
Or even better, if DNA technology existed then, if they could have swapped him in 1974, they would have matched him to Marise right then and there. She would have had justice 48 years earlier. Her parents would have seen it.
Oh my God, you're right. Her parents would have known. They would have been alive to see him handcuffed. That is a tragedy of timing that is hard to stomach.
It really is. And looking back now, with the benefit of hindsight, the similarities between the 1974 attack and the 1964 murder are chilling. Both involved vehicles, both involved secluded areas, both involved violent sexual assault, both victims were physically restrained.
He had a pattern. He had a literal MO. And because the justice system failed in 1974, he got to live another 6 years as a free man until his heart gave out in 1980.
Exactly. And that raises the terrifying question, what else did he do?
Yeah, you've got 1964, murder, 1974, violent assault. That's a 10-year gap. Sexual predators usually don't take decade-long sabbaticals.
The police don't think he did. After the press conference, after his face was plastered all over the news, the tips started coming in. One woman, Gina Donahue Connors, came forward.
What was her story?
She was a kid in the mid to late 60s, so right in that gap. She was walking with a friend near 3rd and Alter Streets. A man pulls up in a car. "Come on, I'll give you a ride."
The classic lure.
They said no. He persisted. No, come on, I'll give you a ride." They got scared and ran into a store. When she saw Forte's picture in 2022, she knew. She said, "That's him."
wow, that could have been another Marise.
Easily. And the state police were very clear at the press conference. They said, "We do not believe Marise Chiverella was his only victim." They are actively asking anyone who lived in Hazleton between 1964 and 1980 to search their memories.
It makes you wonder how many other cold cases or just unreported assaults in that area belong to him.
It does. And that's the power of this technology. It doesn't just solve one crime, it illuminates a whole history that was hidden in the dark.
Speaking of the technology, Sarah, we need to dive into this a bit deeper, because what Eric Schubert and the investigators did here, this is the new frontier of crime solving.
It is. It's called Forensic Genetic Genealogy, or FGG.
And it's not the same as what we see on CSI, right? It's not just run it through the computer and get a ding.
No, and that's a huge misconception. We talked about CODIS earlier, the FBI database. That only works if the bad guy has been arrested before and his DNA is in the system. Forte wasn't in CODIS because he died before it existed.
Right, so he was invisible to traditional law enforcement.
FGG is completely different. It uses the commercial databases, well, specifically the ones that allow law enforcement access, like GED Match or Family Tree DNA. These are filled with regular people like you and me who just wanted to see if they were Irish or Italian.
Which brings up the big ethical debate. I mean, we have to address it.
We do.
If I take a DNA test because I want to know my heritage, am I inadvertently turning in my third cousin for a murder he committed 30 years ago?
Effectively, yes. That is exactly what happens.
And some people argue that's a massive invasion of privacy, that we shouldn't be fishing through people's genetic data to conduct police work without a warrant for that specific person.
It's a valid argument. There are civil liberties groups deeply concerned about this. They worry about where the line is drawn. Today, it's murder. Tomorrow, is it unpaid parking tickets?
Okay, unpaid parking tickets is a stretch, but I get the slippery slope argument. But then you look at a case like this. You look at Marise Chiverella.
Exactly. You look at the Golden State Killer. You look at the hundreds of cases solved since 2018. The general consensus, at least for now, is that for violent crimes, for murder and rape, the societal benefit outweighs the privacy concern.
I have to agree. I mean, if my DNA can help stop a monster or identify a Jane Doe, go ahead, use it. I don't have anything to hide. And if my distant cousin is a serial killer, well, sorry, cuz, you're on your own.
Remind me not to commit any crimes in your family.
You're safe with me, Sarah. But seriously, the way this works, it's tedious, right? It's not instant.
Oh, it's incredibly tedious. Eric Schubert described it as building a tree backward and forward. You find a match who is a sixth cousin. That means you share a great-great-great-great-grandparent.
That is so far back.
So you have to identify that ancestor from the 1800s. Then you have to trace every single one of their descendants forward to the present day. Thousands of people. You have to find out who married who moved where, who stayed in Hazleton.
It's like a logic puzzle from hell.
It is. And Eric Schubert did this for 2 years, up to 20 hours a week, for free.
That kid deserves a medal, seriously.
He really does. And the breakthrough came when he found the surname Palmino. That connected to a known family in the area, and suddenly the tree started to narrow. They went from 53 centimorgans, which is a tiny amount of shared DNA, up to 100, then 500, then over 1,000.
And that's when they knew they were close.
When you hit 1,000 centimorgans, you're looking at a first cousin or a half uncle. You are in the immediate family. And that led them to the 4 men and eventually to James Paul Forte.
It's amazing that he was right there the whole time. The yearbook photo described him as tall, blue-eyed, handsome, future undecided.
Future undecided. Chilling, isn't it? Knowing what his future actually held.
And he was buried in Calvary Cemetery. He could see her grave from his window when he was alive, and then he ended up buried in the same ground.
There's a grim irony there. But you know, Mike, there's another layer to this. The technology is the how, but the why is the persistence of the Pennsylvania State Police.
Yeah, we touched on this, but 58 years? Most cases go cold after 58 hours.
They never stopped. Corporal Barron said he read all 5,000 pages of the file. Can you imagine? 5,000 pages of typed reports, handwritten notes, interviews from 1964.
That is dedication. That is respecting the victim.
And preserving the evidence. That is the hero move here. In 1964, DNA wasn't a thing. Watson and Crick had only discovered the structure of it 11 years prior. It was theoretical science. Nobody thought you could catch a crook with it.
So they had this jacket, Marise's jacket. It had fluids on it. They could have just washed it or thrown it in a box in a damp basement where it would rot.
Or lost it. How many times do we hear about evidence lockers being purged or flooded?
Constantly.
But someone back in 1964, some trooper whose name we might not even know, decided, I am going to package this carefully, I am going to store this properly, because maybe, just maybe, someday it will matter.
And 58 years later, it was the smoking gun. That foresight is incredible.
It's a lesson for every police department today. Never throw anything away. You don't know what technology will exist in 2080.
Right, we might have brain scans or who knows what. Just keep the evidence.
So, we have the killer identified, we have the family finding peace, we have the community finally able to exhale after nearly 6 decades, but the story doesn't quite end there.
It never does it?
Because identifying Forte didn't just solve a murder, it exposed the cracks in the system that let him operate. And it sparked a new wave of hope for other cold cases in Pennsylvania.
Corporal Barron said that, didn't he? He said this should give hope to every family waiting.
He did. And in our final part, we're going to look at the legacy of this case. We're going to talk about what happened next for the Chiverella family, how the town of Hazleton is memorializing Marise, and the broader impact this has had on how Pennsylvania handles cold cases.
And I think we need to talk about the victims we still don't know about. The ones Forte might have hurt who never got a press conference.
Absolutely. We owe it to them to keep looking.
You know, Sarah, looking at that photo of Marise, the one with her in her communion dress or the school photo, she looks so full of life. She wanted to be a nun. She was teaching herself the organ.
She was a bright light.
It breaks your heart that she never got to be any of those things. But at least now, she's not just a statistic. She's not just the girl in the pit. She's Marise Ann Chiverella, and we know exactly who took her from us.
And that name, James Paul Forte, will forever be attached to his crime. He doesn't get to be the handsome high schooler anymore. He is the murderer. History has been corrected.
Amen to that.
We're going to take a short break, but when we come back in part 3, we're going to wrap up this incredible saga. We'll discuss the final thoughts from the investigators, the lasting tribute to Marise, and why this case is the gold standard for never giving up.
You don't want to miss the conclusion. It's emotional, but it's inspiring.
Make sure you're subscribed. Part 3 is coming up.
See you there.
We'll see you soon.
And we are back. I have to tell you, Sarah, sitting with this case, even during the break, I couldn't stop thinking about that final revelation. We know who it is. We know it's James Paul Forte. But knowing the name isn't the same as having the proof, right? You can have a name, you can have a suspicion, you can even have a genealogy chart that looks like a direct hit. But in a court of law, or even just for history's sake, you need absolute biological certainty.
That's the standard, beyond a reasonable doubt. And in this case, since Forte had been dead since 1980, they couldn't just bring him in for a cheek swab. They had to take a much more drastic step, one that I think really signifies just how serious the Pennsylvania State Police were about this.
Exactly. They had to disturb the dead to answer for the dead. On January 6th, 2022, they went to Calvary Cemetery in Drums, Pennsylvania.
I can't even imagine that scene. It's been, over 40 years since he was buried?
41 years, 7 months, and 21 days, to be precise. They obtained a search warrant for the grave of James Paul Forte. And you have to appreciate the gravity of this. Exhumations aren't common. They are a logistical nightmare, they are a legal hurdle, and spiritually, for many people, they are a taboo. But the Luzerne County District Attorney's Office and the state police were in lockstep here.
It feels like the final confrontation, doesn't it? He thought he was safe. He thought he had escaped judgment.
Deputy District Attorney Daniel Zola actually said something profound about that moment. He said, Forte may have thought he took his secret to the grave, but we brought him out of the ground and took his DNA. It gives me chills. It's almost biblical.
It is. It's like the earth refusing to cover his crime any longer. So they get the tissue sample, they send it to the lab, and then the wait begins.
And this time, the wait wasn't 58 years. It was less than a month. The results came back on a Thursday morning, February 3rd, 2022. Corporal Mark Barron opens that email. And Sarah, we need to talk about the math here. Because match is a soft word. We need to understand the certainty.
I saw the numbers in the file and my brain almost couldn't process them.
It's staggering. The match probability was 1 in 480 septillion.
Septillion? I don't even know how many zeros that is.
It's 24 zeros. Let me try to contextualize this because it's important. Scientists estimate that about 117 billion people have ever lived on Earth, ever in the history of the species. To find a random person who matched this DNA profile by accident, you would need to search 4 million planet Earths.
Wow. So this isn't a maybe, this isn't a highly likely, it is him.
It is him. It is James Paul Forte. The Y chromosome matched, the autosomal DNA matched. After 57 years, 10 months, and 23 days, they had him. The monster who lived 6 blocks away.
That detail, the 6 blocks away, we touched on it briefly before the break, but I want to dig into that because that changes the entire complexion of the crime. This wasn't a drifter. This wasn't someone passing through town. This was a neighbor.
It's the nightmare scenario. He lived at 18 West 14th Street for a time. He lived at 745 North Laurel Street. He lived at 770 North Laurel Street, all within a 10-minute walk of the Chiverella grocery store. But the most haunting address is the one on West 14th Street.
Why that one specifically?
Because it's directly across the street from St. Joseph's Slavic Roman Catholic Cemetery.
Oh my God, no.
Yes, that is where Marise was laid to rest. Sarah, he could see her grave from his window.
That makes me sick, physically sick. He murders this innocent 9-year-old girl, throws her away in a coal pit, and then sits in his room and watches her funeral procession, watches her family mourn, watches the stone get placed.
For 16 years. He lived with that view, or nearby, for 16 years before he died. It suggests a level of sociopathy that is hard to wrap your head around. He didn't flee the country. He didn't move to California. He stayed right there in Hazleton, tending bar, selling bar supplies, living a muted life.
And nobody knew. That's the part that gets me. His name wasn't in the files. 5,000 pages of investigation, and James Paul Forte isn't written down once?
Not once. He was a ghost. And this is why the genealogy aspect is so revolutionary. Traditional police work relies on connection. Who knew her, who saw her, who had a motive. Forte had no known connection. He was essentially a stranger, despite living 6 blocks away. He was a random attacker in the truest sense. Without DNA, you don't catch those people. You just don't.
But was he totally invisible? Because usually guys like this, they don't just do one thing. A crime this violent, this depraved, it usually isn't an isolated incident. Did we find out anything about his history after the identification?
And here is where the story goes from tragic to infuriating. Once they had his name, they ran his full background check, and they found something. 10 years after he killed Marise, in 1974, James Paul Forte struck again.
What? He was arrested?
He was. April 3rd, 1974. A 23-year-old woman. She was visiting a friend at the Capri Lounge in Hazleton. Forte, who was 33 at the time, offered to give her a ride home.
Let me guess, he didn't take her home?
No. He drove her to Stockton Mountain Road. Isolated, desolate, just like the stripping pit where he left Marise. He sexually assaulted her. It was described as a very violent encounter.
Oh my God.
But this woman, she survived. A truck pulled up behind them and it spooked him. He fled. He let her out later in town. She went to the police. They did a rape kit. They searched his car. They found hair samples. They found mud on the tires that matched the crime scene. They had him, Sarah. They arrested James Paul Forte for involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, indecent assault, and aggravated assault.
Okay, so 1974. This is 10 years after Marise. If they catch him here, do they connect him to Marise?
No, because there's no DNA technology in 1974. And remember, he wasn't a suspect in the Marise case. So nobody thought to check if the guy who assaulted this woman was the same guy who killed the little girl a decade earlier. But here is the part that will make your blood boil. He's charged with violent sexual assault. What do you think happened to him?
I mean, in the 70s? I'm hoping he went to prison for a long time?
He should have. But on September 18th, 1974, he pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, aggravated assault. The prosecutors withdrew the sexual assault charges.
You have to be kidding me.
I wish I was. The judge, Judge Bernard C. Berminski, sentenced James Paul Forte to 1 year of special probation.
Probation for a violent sexual assault?
Probation. And he had to pay the victim's hospital bill. That was it. He walked out of that courthouse a free man, a child murderer and a violent rapist, and the system gave him a slap on the wrist.
That is absolutely devastating. I mean, think about the message that sends. He kills a child in 64, gets away with it. He attacks a woman in 74, basically gets away with it. He must have felt invincible.
He probably did. He was arrested again in 1978 for reckless endangerment involving a gun, running down the street with a gun. But those records are lost, so we don't know the outcome. But essentially, he lived his life without ever facing real consequences, until he died of a heart attack in 1980 at work.
It feels so unjust. He got to live his life. Marise didn't. And Marise Chiverella, her mother, spent 50 years praying for an answer she never got while she was alive.
That's the tragedy of cold cases. Sometimes the answers come too late for the people who need them most. But, and this is a big but, they didn't come too late for the siblings, or for the town.
Let's talk about that moment when the news broke, the press conference, February 10th, 2022. This wasn't just a standard police briefing, was it?
No, this was an exorcism for the town of Hazleton. The room was packed. You had the current investigators, the retired investigators, guys in their 80s who worked the case in 1964, and the Chiverella family. And you had this young kid, Eric Schubert, the genealogist. It was this incredible mix of generations.
I watched the footage of Corporal Mark Barron speaking. It was heartbreaking.
It really was. You know, we think of state troopers as these stoic, unshakable figures, but Barron, he broke down. He was reading his statement, talking about how heinous the crime was, and he just started weeping. He had to pause to compose himself. He said, "We're always told not to get attached to a case, but you can't help it."
That really shows you the weight they were carrying. This wasn't a file to them. It was a little girl.
Exactly. He talked about how the case changed the community, how doors started getting locked. He said, whether you like it or not, the way you lived changed after March 18th, 1964. He understood that he wasn't just solving a murder, he was validating the trauma of an entire city.
And the family, the siblings, I can't imagine what that day was like for them.
Carmen Marie, the sister, she was so strong. She stood up there and said something that I think is a lesson for all of us. She said her parents never wanted revenge. They didn't want punishment. They just wanted justice. She said, "Our family now knows the identity of her murderer. Justice has been served."
That is incredible, Grace. To focus on the truth rather than the anger.
It is. And Ron, the brother, he thanked the troopers by name. He called them the frontline team. He talked about how, for 58 years, the police never left their side. They provided comfort. They became family. It's a testament to the Pennsylvania State Police that they didn't just investigate, they cared.
And we have to talk about Eric Schubert. He was at the press conference too, right?
He was, and he was emotional too. He said it was the hardest genealogy task he'd ever faced. He called it the big fish. Seeing him there, barely 20 years old, standing next to these hardened detectives, it really highlighted how the world has changed. You have this kid using a laptop and an algorithm to finish what men with typewriters and magnifying glasses started in the 60s.
It's the perfect marriage of old school dedication and new school technology. The detectives preserved the evidence, the genealogist unlocked it.
Precisely. Without that preservation in 1964, without them saving the clothes, the fluids, keeping it dry and safe, Eric Schubert would have had nothing to work with.
This brings up a huge topic, Mike, genetic genealogy. This case is the fourth oldest cold case in American history solved this way. It's becoming the new standard, isn't it?
It is. The biggest leap forward in criminal justice since the invention of the fingerprint, maybe even bigger.
But it's not without controversy. We should probably unpack how this actually works, because I think people hear DNA match and think it's simple. But what Eric Schubert did wasn't simple.
No, it's incredibly complex. So let's distinguish between CODIS and what happened here. CODIS is the FBI's database. It's effective, but it's limited. It only has DNA from people who have been arrested or convicted. If you're a killer who has never been caught, or your crime was before DNA collection, you aren't in there. Forte wasn't in CODIS.
Right, so he was invisible to that system.
Exactly. Enter genetic genealogy. This uses databases like GED Match or Family Tree DNA. These are public. Regular people, you, me, our listeners, we take a test from Ancestry or 23andMe, and we upload our data to these sites to find our third cousins or build our family tree.
So we are voluntarily putting our genetic code out there.
Yes, and investigators are now using that. They upload the killer's DNA, the phantom profile, and the database doesn't look for the killer, it looks for the killer's relatives.
That's the key difference.
Right. In this case, they found a sixth cousin, someone who shared a great-great-great-grandparent with Forte. That is a tiny, tiny amount of shared DNA, about 53 centimorgans. It's a needle in a stack of needles.
And that's where the genealogist comes in. They have to build a family tree backwards from the cousin to the common ancestor, and then forwards again to find everyone that ancestor produced?
Yes, it's a massive logic puzzle. You're looking for a male, born in a certain time frame, who lived in Hazleton in 1964. You prune the branches of the tree until you're left with one name, James Paul Forte.
Now, the controversy. Some people argue this is an invasion of privacy. If I upload my DNA to find my Irish roots, I didn't necessarily consent to ratting out my second cousin for a crime.
It's a valid debate. The argument against it is the genetic informant theory. You are implicating your biological family without their permission. But the counter-argument, and the one that law enforcement stands by, is that you voluntarily put your information in a public space. And if that information can stop a rapist or identify a child murderer, isn't that a moral good?
And looking at cases like the Golden State Killer or Marise Chiverella, it's hard to argue with the results.
That's the thing. Since 2018, over 600 cold cases have been solved this way. 600 families. Murders, rapes, unidentified bodies. These are cases that were dead, buried, forgotten, and suddenly they are solved. The Chiverella case proves that no case is ever truly cold anymore. It's just waiting for the science to catch up.
DNA doesn't forget.
It never does. And that's a terrifying thought for criminals, but a hopeful one for victims.
Speaking of other victims, after Forte was identified, there was a sense that Marise might not have been the only one, right? Aside from the 1974 assault.
Yeah, this is the dark ripple effect. When they announced his name, a woman named Gina Donahue Connors came forward. She told a story about being a kid in the late 60s in Hazleton. She was walking with a friend, and a man in a car stopped and tried to lure them in. "Come on, I'll give you a ride."
The classic lure.
She and her friend ran into a store and got away. But when she saw Forte's picture in 2022, she knew. She said, "That's him."
It makes you wonder, 1964 to 1980, that's 16 years. He was living there the whole time. The 1974 assault we know about, the 1978 gun incident we know about, but what else?
Police were very clear about this. Corporal Barron said, "We do not believe that Marise Chiverella was Forte's only victim. They are still asking people to come forward. If anyone remembers anything about James Paul Forte in Hazleton between 64 and 80, call the state police, because there might be other families out there waiting for their own miracle."
It's unsettled history, but at least for the Chiverella family, the biggest question has been answered.
It has. And you know, Sarah, thinking about this whole story, from the little girl buying canned goods for the nuns to the teenage genealogist in his dorm room, it's a story about persistence.
It really is. It's about not giving up.
Think about Mary Chiverella. She saved every sympathy card, every single one. She kept her daughter alive in that house, and the police kept her alive in the precinct. It would have been so easy to close the file in 1970 or 1980 or 2000, to say, "It's been too long, the witnesses are dead, let's move on."
But they didn't.
They didn't. They reviewed it every year. They called the family every month. That level of dedication, it restores your faith in humanity a little bit. Yes, there are monsters like Forte, but there are also people like Trooper Good, like Mark Barron, like Eric Schubert, who will spend decades fighting for a girl they never met.
And I think that's the legacy of Marise and Chiverella. She isn't just a victim anymore. She's the reason that cold case protocols in Pennsylvania are what they are. She's the proof that justice is possible, even if it takes a lifetime.
Exactly. She wanted to be a nun. She wanted to do good. And in a tragic, roundabout way, her story has done an incredible amount of good. It has given hope to every other cold case family in the country.
It's a heavy story, Mike, but an important one.
the most important ones usually are.
Well, that brings us to the end of another story from Detective STARBORN.
We hope today's episode was interesting and captivating for you.
Just a reminder, new podcasts come out every single day, so don't miss out. Tomorrow, a new incredible story awaits you.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, now's the perfect time. And don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this episode.
We'll be waiting for you in the next Detective STARBORN podcast.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.